My wife looked at me and said I wasn't the kind of man she'd ever raise children with. I met her gaze and replied, "The feeling is mutual." I ended it right there, gathered my things, and walked away calmly. Within days, she was demanding an apology, right as her private plans became very public. I'm 35M. My wife, Lauren, is 33F. Married for 6 years, together for 9. No kids yet. Which, as of last Tuesday, suddenly became a weapon. The fight didn't start big. It never does. It started over something stupid, dinner plans. I'd worked late, texted that I was grabbing takeout. She snapped that she'd already thawed chicken and that I was incapable of thinking ahead. That tone, sharp, dismissive, like I was an employee who messed up, had become normal over the last year. I tried to de-escalate, told her it wasn't a big deal. She laughed, not amused, not playful. The kind of laugh meant to belittle. Then she said it. "You know what your problem is?" She said, arms crossed. "You're not the kind of man I'd raise kids with." It wasn't shouted. It was delivered calmly. Precisely. Like she'd rehearsed it before. Something in me went quiet. Not angry. Not hurt. Just done. I looked at her and said, "Well, the feeling is mutual." Her eyebrows shot up. I don't think she expected pushback. She opened her mouth to fire back, and I cut her off. Not loudly, just firmly. "I'm done," I said. "I'm not staying married to someone who talks about me like that." She scoffed. "You're being dramatic." I walked past her, packed a bag without rushing, grabbed my keys, and left. No yelling. No threats. No tears. As I closed the door, she shouted, "You'll come crawling back when you cool off." I didn't respond. What I didn't know then, what makes this whole thing darker, was that she already had plans in motion, and they were about to surface whether she liked it or not. I didn't go far that night. Just a hotel off the highway, the kind with neutral art, and a lobby that smells faintly like cleaner. I slept better than I had in months, which probably says more than I want it to. Lauren didn't sleep. I know because my phone lit up at 6:04 a.m. with her first message. "We need to talk. You don't just walk out of a marriage." I didn't reply. Then came the follow-ups. "You took that way out of context." I was emotional. "You're being immature." By noon, the tone shifted. She sent a long paragraph about how couples say things they don't mean, how real adults work through conflict, how I was running away instead of stepping up. That one almost made me laugh. I responded once. One sentence. "You don't get to question my worth as a future father and then decide I overreacted." Her reply came instantly. "I didn't say you'd be a bad father. I said I wouldn't raise kids with you the way you are right now." Semantic gymnastics. Classic Lauren. She demanded we meet that evening. I said no. She accused me of stonewalling. I reminded her I'd already made my decision. That's when she dropped the line she always used when she felt control slipping. "Do you know how this looks for me?" There it was. Not us. Not the marriage. Her. That night, she posted a vague Instagram story. Black screen. White text. Some people confuse silence with strength. Friends started checking in. Carefully. Neutral questions. I kept my answers minimal. I wasn't interested in winning the narrative. I just wanted out clean. What I didn't know yet, what made her panic make sense later, was that while she was telling people I'd stormed out over one comment, she was also scrambling behind the scenes. Because the comment wasn't the first crack. It was the first one I refused to absorb. And apparently, my timing was very inconvenient for the plans she thought were still private. The next 2 days were quiet on my end and absolute chaos on hers. Lauren went from demanding a face-to-face apology to acting like this was some temporary timeout I'd invented. She texted reminders about the mortgage, about the dog, about how married people don't just disappear. She even asked if I'd be home in time to sign for a package. I ignored all of it. On day 3, something strange happened. I got a call from Mark, a mutual friend, more her friend than mine. We'd never spoken one-on-one before. "Hey man," he said awkwardly. "I'm not trying to get involved, but are you and Lauren separated?" I paused. "Yes." There was a long silence. Then, "Okay, that explains why this feels weird." I asked him what he meant. He hesitated, then said, "Lauren told us months ago that you two were basically done, that you were emotionally checked out, and she was planning next steps." Next steps. He tried to soften it immediately. Said he assumed we were on the same page. Said Lauren made it sound mutual. Like a slow, adult transition. That call sat heavy with me. That night, curiosity finally outweighed my desire to stay detached. I logged into an old shared cloud account we used for bills and documents, one I hadn't checked in ages because Lauren insisted on handling admin. There was a folder I didn't recognize. Inside it, PDFs, spreadsheets. Notes titled things like post-separation budget and living options, solo. One document was labeled talking points. Talking points. I opened it. Bullet points. Carefully phrased. How to frame our marriage issues. How to explain the inevitable split to friends and family. A line about how I wasn't ready for the responsibility of children. That was when it hit me. Her comment during the fight wasn't a slip. It was a preview. And my calm exit hadn't just bruised her ego. It had completely wrecked a plan she'd been quietly preparing, one where I stayed put, played my role, and apologized on schedule. Now she was scrambling. And judging by the timestamps on those files, she was running out of room to control the story. Once I saw the files, everything from the last year clicked into place. The sudden, we should wait, conversations about kids. The way she'd started talking about motherhood like a performance review instead of a shared future. The constant comparisons, her friends' husbands, their promotions, their houses, their timelines. I'd always been framed as not there yet. What I hadn't realized was that she'd already decided I never would be. The next morning, Lauren showed up at the hotel unannounced. I opened the door to her standing there in workout clothes, arms folded, jaw tight, already annoyed that I'd made her drive. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't ask if I wanted to talk. She said, "Are you done punishing me?" I told her I wasn't punishing anyone. I was done. She rolled her eyes. "You don't just end a marriage over one sentence." I asked her how long she'd been telling people we were basically over. Her face twitched. "Just for a second. That's not what this is about," she snapped. "You violated my privacy. By seeing documents you stored in a shared account?" I asked. She scoffed. "You went digging because you can't handle conflict." I pulled up one of the files on my phone and read directly from it. The bullet point about me being emotionally unprepared for fatherhood. She went silent. Then angry. "You had no right," she said. "Those were plans. Everyone makes contingency plans. Plans where I stay married until you're ready to pull the plug?" I asked calmly. She snapped back instantly. "I was trying to do this responsibly." That's when she said something that made my stomach drop. "I was going to give you time," she said. "I just didn't expect you to blow it up before I was ready." There it was. Not our timeline. Hers. She demanded an apology. Said I owed her one for walking out, for embarrassing her, for making her look foolish when she'd been trying to manage things gracefully. I told her no. I told her the moment she decided I wasn't someone she'd raise kids with, while still staying married to me. She ended it. She laughed bitterly and said, "You're really going to regret this." But for the first time, her voice wasn't confident. It was scared, because within hours, the version of events she'd been rehearsing was about to collide with people who weren't following her script anymore. By the time I got back to the hotel room, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Lauren wasn't calling anymore. She'd moved on to messages, long, frantic paragraphs stacked on top of each other, each one contradicting the last. First, she wanted to reset and talk like adults. Then she accused me of trying to sabotage her future. Then she demanded I come home so we could present a united front. That phrase, united front, made my jaw clench. Around noon, I got a notification I wasn't expecting. A mutual friend had tagged me in a group chat I'd barely participated in over the years. Someone asked, openly, "Wait, I thought Lauren said they were separating already?" Another person replied, "Yeah, she told us months ago he wasn't ready for kids and she was planning her exit." Planning her exit. No one was being cruel. No one was attacking her. They were just confused. Comparing notes. And that was the problem. Lauren's version only worked when no one compared notes. I didn't jump in to defend myself. I didn't correct anything. I just watched. An hour later, Lauren called again. I answered this time. "What did you tell people?" she demanded. "Nothing," I said. "That's a lie. They're asking questions." "Because your stories don't line up," I replied. "That's not my doing." She went quiet, then hissed, "You're enjoying this." I wasn't. What I was feeling was something colder, distance. The kind you get when you finally see the whole picture and realize how long you've been standing inside it. She started crying then. Loud. Angry. Said she'd been trying to protect both of us. Said I was supposed to come around eventually. Said marriages evolve, and I'd failed some invisible test. "You humiliated me," she said. "I need you to apologize. Publicly." That's when I knew there was no coming back. "I'm not apologizing for leaving a marriage you were already narrating the ending to," I said. She screamed my name into the phone like it was an accusation. I hung up. That night, I forwarded the documents I'd found to my lawyer and booked a longer stay at the hotel. Lauren thought she was losing control of the narrative. What she hadn't realized yet was that the narrative wasn't the real problem. The timing was. And the people she'd quietly prepared for a future without me were about to realize I hadn't agreed to be written out of my own life. The lawyer call grounded me in a way nothing else had. Hearing someone calmly explain next steps, separation logistics, asset protection, documentation, made this feel real in a way Lauren's theatrics never did. This wasn't a dramatic pause in a marriage. This was an ending. Lauren, meanwhile, escalated. She showed up at my office the next morning without warning. Walked past reception like she belonged there, heels clicking, jaw set. My coworkers pretended not to notice, but everyone noticed. She stood in my doorway and said, loudly enough for half the floor to hear, "Are you seriously doing this to me?" I stepped outside with her before she could say more. She didn't start with apologies. She started with accusations. Said I was humiliating her. Said I was cold. Said she'd carried our relationship emotionally for years. Said my calm exit was proof I never cared. I told her that calm didn't mean indifferent. It meant I'd already processed what she'd said. I told her words like, "Not the kind of man I'd raise kids with, don't get walked back with tone policing." She scoffed. "You're acting like I said you'd be a bad father. You said you wouldn't choose me," I replied, "while staying married to me." That's when she dropped the mask. She leaned in and hissed, "You were supposed to fight." There it was again. The script. The expectation. The version of me she'd planned around. Angry, reactive, apologetic. "You ruined the timeline," she continued. "I was trying to do this cleanly." I asked her how clean it would have been for me. She didn't answer. She just demanded, again, that I apologize. Said I needed to take responsibility for how this looked. Said if I didn't, she'd make sure people knew the truth. I told her she was free to tell whatever story she wanted. She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think you're winning right now." "I'm not competing," I said. "I'm leaving." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. As she walked away, she turned and said, "When this blows up, don't come asking me to fix it." What she didn't realize was that things were already blowing up, just not in the direction she expected. Because later that afternoon, someone else reached out. Someone who'd been on her talking points list. And they had questions she wasn't prepared to answer. The message came from Claire, Lauren's sister. We were never especially close, but we'd always been cordial. Birthday texts. Holiday small talk. Nothing deep. So when her name popped up, I knew this wasn't casual. "Hey, I hope this isn't weird," she wrote. "But I think you deserve to know what's being said." She didn't wait for me to respond. She sent screenshots, group texts, family thread, dates going back months. Lauren telling her parents that I was stalling on kids, that I was emotionally unavailable, that she was preparing for a future where she'd have to make hard choices. One message, from 3 weeks before the fight, stood out. "If he doesn't step up soon, I'll have to move forward without him. I can't keep waiting." Waiting for what? I hadn't known there was a countdown. Claire followed up with a voice memo. Quiet. Careful. She said Lauren had been framing everything as a slow, mutual understanding. That I knew kids were non-negotiable and was dragging my feet. That the fight was just the moment it finally came out. Claire paused, then added, "But after what she said to you, I don't think that's fair. And I don't think she expected you to leave." That last part echoed everything else. Lauren hadn't expected resistance. She'd expected compliance, delay, maybe a tearful argument she could later summarize as "we tried." Instead, I'd removed myself from the equation entirely. That night, Lauren texted again. No anger this time. No accusations. Just, "Can we please talk? I'm spiraling." I didn't respond. Because spiraling wasn't new for her. Losing control was. By morning, the screenshots Claire sent had started circulating quietly. Not blasted. Not weaponized. Just passed along when someone asked, "Wait, what actually happened?" And once people saw timestamps, months of prep versus one calm exit, the tone shifted. Lauren noticed. She called 6 times before noon. Left a voicemail through tears, saying I was letting people misunderstand her. Saying she'd never meant for things to go this far. Saying she needed me to help her fix the damage. That's when it finally hit me. She didn't want me back as a husband. She wanted me back as a buffer. And the more her private plans became public, the more desperate she became to put me back where I'd been. Silent, steady, and absorbing the impact meant for her. But that spot was gone. And for the first time, she was facing the future she'd planned for, without me cushioning the fall. By the end of that week, Lauren's composure was gone. She stopped trying to sound reasonable and started trying to sound wronged. Every message carried the same theme. I'd blindsided her. I'd overreacted. I destroyed something that could have been salvaged if I'd just stayed and talked it through. What she couldn't accept was that I had talked it through, internally, and reached a conclusion she wasn't prepared for. She showed up at the house again, this time while I was there packing up the rest of my things. She didn't knock, just unlocked the door and walked in like nothing had changed. "You're really doing this," she said flatly, looking at the half-empty closet. "Yes." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "All because of one sentence." "No," I said. "Because of what that sentence revealed." She followed me room to room, narrating my actions like a commentator. "You're making a mistake. You're throwing away years. You're proving I was right about you." That last one was her favorite. Then she switched tactics again. She sat on the bed, suddenly calm, and said, "You know people are starting to think I planned this, right?" "I know you did," I replied. Her head snapped up. "You don't know anything." I pulled out my phone and showed her one screenshot. Just one. A time-stamped message from months ago. I didn't say who sent it. She stared at it, then at me. "You shared private conversations?" she accused. "No," I said. "You did." Her face went red. "So now you're trying to ruin me." "I'm not trying to do anything," I said. "I'm just not cleaning up anymore." That's when she lost control completely. She started yelling about how unfair it was that she was being judged, how everyone ignored her stress, her biological clock, her sacrifices. She said I should have known she was under pressure and risen to the occasion. I asked her when she planned to tell me there was an occasion. She had no answer. As I carried the last box to my car, she followed me outside, crying openly now. Neighbors pretended not to look. "Please," she said, "just apologize. If you apologize, I can fix this." "Fix what? The marriage? Or the story?" I closed the trunk and finally said it out loud. "I'm not apologizing for refusing to audition for a future you'd already decided I wasn't part of." She stood there as I drove away, phone in hand, probably already drafting the next message. But the ground had shifted. Her private plans weren't private anymore. And no apology from me was going to put that back in the box. The apology demand came 3 days later. Not a conversation, not a discussion, a demand. Lauren sent a long email, subject line, "This has gone too far." It read like a legal brief mixed with a performance review. She listed everything she believed I'd done wrong, leaving without proper discussion, allowing people to misinterpret her intentions, failing to protect her reputation during a vulnerable time. Then came the core requirement. She said I needed to apologize. Specifically, she wanted a message sent to her family and close friends clarifying that I'd misunderstood her comment, that she never meant I wasn't fit to be a father, and that my reaction was emotionally driven. In return, she said, she'd be willing to reconsider how this ends. That was the first time I actually laughed out loud. She still thought she was negotiating. What she didn't know, what made that email almost surreal, was that the day before, her private plans had crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. Her mom had called me. Not angry, not confrontational, just confused. She asked why Lauren had been telling them for months that I didn't want children, while simultaneously telling me we were on the same page. She asked why Lauren already had an apartment shortlist saved and a financial breakdown labeled post-marriage. I told her the truth. Calmly, without embellishment. I told her exactly what Lauren had said during the fight. Word for word. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then her mom said quietly, "She didn't tell us that part." Of course she didn't. By that evening, Lauren's sister texted again. Just one line. "She's freaking out. Everyone's asking questions." That's when the apology demand made sense. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about damage control. She needed me to publicly invalidate my own experience so she could restore the version of events she'd already sold. I replied to her email with 2 sentences. "I'm not apologizing for believing you when you told me who you thought I was. Please stop contacting me." Within minutes, my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was raw this time. Angry. Panicked. No script left. "You're really going to let people think I'm the bad guy?" I listened once. Then I deleted it. Because the truth was, I wasn't letting anything happen anymore. I was just finally not interfering with the consequences of her own plans. And she was running out of places to hide them. The final blow-up didn't come from me. It came from silence. Once I stopped responding completely, no texts, no emails, no secondhand messages through friends, Lauren lost the last thing she'd been relying on, reaction. There was no one left to argue with, correct, or pressure into smoothing things over. That's when her private plans fully went public. Not in a dramatic expose way. Worse than that. In pieces. A friend mentioned the apartment shortlist she'd shown them as a backup. Someone else brought up how she'd talked about timelines for kids without me present. Her sister stopped defending her altogether. Her mom stopped calling her and started checking in on me. Lauren noticed the shift immediately. She sent one final message from a new number. Short. Desperate. I never said you'd be a bad father. I just needed you to be better. You're blowing this out of proportion. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it without replying. Because here's the thing she still doesn't understand. You don't get to threaten someone's future value in a marriage and then decide later it was just pressure. You don't get to plan someone out quietly and then panic when they remove themselves loudly. And you definitely don't get an apology for revealing how you already saw them. People eventually stopped asking me what happened. They didn't need to. Lauren had told enough versions of the story that the contradictions spoke for themselves. Every time someone asked her a simple follow-up, when did you decide that? Why didn't he know? She got sharper, more defensive, more brittle. Meanwhile, my life got quieter, cleaner. I moved into my own place, filed the paperwork, split things evenly. No drama, no revenge, just distance and clarity. The strangest part? I don't miss her. I miss the version of myself who thought love meant absorbing disrespect to keep the peace. But that guy didn't leave the marriage. He stayed too long. When she said, "You're not the kind of man I'd raise kids with," she thought she was asserting power. She wasn't. She was giving me permission to walk away without guilt. And for the first time in years, I took it. Calmly, completely, and without apologizing for it.